So we'll start with the non-RON breathing or any other meditation you like to do to settle your mind. So you could ask yourself that question, is watching my breath, what I'm doing right now, is it virtuous or non-virtuous? Or put in another way, is it a I'm creating the cause for future happiness, or I'm creating the cause for future neutral experience? Or do I create the cause for future problems? So watching the breath is a neutral object. It's neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. What makes it virtuous or non-virtuous depends on the motivation why we watch the breath. So for us, because we haven't realized emptiness yet, so watching the breath definitely leads to rebirth within cyclic existence. Only if you would meditate on the breath while being aware that the I doesn't exist from his own side, then your meditation on watching the breath would be a cause to lead you beyond cyclic existence. So if you watch the breath in order to pacify one's mental affliction, by understanding that they bring about suffering, bring about problems, then that would be a virtuous reason why to focus on the breath. However, if we would do it out of pride, because we are good at it, and we can sit a long time, or if you would do it out of jealousy because other people sit better and we want to emulate them, so then that would be a non-virtuous motivation. So that would also apply to the nature of the mind. So the nature of the mind is not a virtuous object. It's not a non-virtuous object. It's a neutral object. So what makes it virtuous or non-virtuous depends on the motivation of why we are focusing on that object, the mind, in order to develop calm abiding. Why we're doing that. So that motivation, would that make it virtuous or non-virtuous? Whereas an object like a Buddha image or love, compassion, they are virtuous by nature. So even if your motivation is not correct, because the object has this virtuous quality, when you focus on them, all that time you accumulate virtue. So, for example, focusing on a Buddha image, so naturally the qualities of the Buddha come to your mind. So it awakens, it makes you closer to the Buddha, and so forth. And love, compassion are virtuous mental qualities. So by focusing on them, love and compassion grows. And these are virtuous mental factor that brings happiness, has happy consequences in the future. Same thing if you would focus on emptiness, that's virtuous by nature because it removes the root of the mental affliction. So it's virtuous by nature. But the breath and the mind, they are neutral. They don't have any qualities on their own that makes them virtuous. So then the virtue come about by the reason why do I focus on that object, the motivation. So one virtuous state of mind is the mind of taking refuge. So we usually start any meditation or prayer with taking refuge. So there one focalize on the qualities of Buddha, the quality of enlightened beings. So one can imagine a Buddha in space in front of oneself, like Shakyamuni Buddha. Or one can visualize many, like in the Gelu merit field, you have hundreds of images there, or representation of Buddha. Again, how virtuous it becomes depends on one's motivation. So the object is virtuous, the Buddha with the enlightened qualities. But if we take refuge just to solve some problem of this life, then the scope of the benefit will only be within this life. If you take refuge with the motivation of getting to a good place after death, then that spiritual energy will last until that is accomplished. If you take refuge with the idea that to ask the Buddha to lead you out of cyclic existence, so that spiritual energy will last till that is accomplished. If you take refuge with the idea of leading all living beings to enlightenment, so the merit of taking refuge will last as long as there's a sentient being still in cyclic existence. So basically, it will last until you become Buddha. So when one makes for those who plan to do long retreats, sometimes there's a preliminary practice of reciting 100,000 times the refuge preliminary. So the way you go about it is to bring about, like we did now, the Buddha in space in front, and then oneself surrounded by all living beings. And then as you recite the refuge prayer, you imagine light rays coming from the heart of all the Buddhas. And that light rays enter by the top of your head and fills you with white nectar, light energy that purifies all your negative karma. So if one does it in Sanskrit, one will recite Namo Gurubhya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya. If one does it in Tibetan, one would recite Lama Lakyap Sujio, Sangye Lakyap Sujio, Chö Lakyap Sujio. Sangye Lakyap Sujio, Chö Lakyap Sujio, Gedun Lakyap Sujio. And if one does it in English, I go for a fish to the Guru, I go for a fish to the Buddha, I go for a fish to the Dharma, I go for a fish to Sangha. So one would recite that 100,000 times by imagining light rays coming from all these Buddhas, and they completely clean your mind of all your negative karma. And then sometimes you would alternate, you would turn the light energy into golden color, and you would imagine that you receive all the qualities of Buddha into you. So that golden light energy would awaken all the Buddha's qualities that are potentially there in your mind. Or one can also imagine all these Buddha in front as inseparable from our gurus. And as you inhale, you imagine inhaling light that comes from their heart. And that light regenerate all the cells of your body and clean all the sickness, all the harm from spirits and all your negative karma, affliction and everything. So if you're good at it, if you work on it, you feel really being in the presence of the Buddha, being in the presence of His Holiness, of Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So by remembering how you felt in their presence when you were actually physically present, or invoking this Buddha from the Dharmakaya, so you can actually get an experience of feeling their presence and receiving their blessing. And the day we reach a certain level of spiritual purity, you can then actually see them in your mind's eye. And then later on, like Lama Tsongkhapa, he could see Manjushri with his bare eyes. So even with his sense consciousness, he could see Manjushri. So for people which live in solitude, like the hermits and the retreaters, you know, you're alone physically, but you're never lonely. You always feel the presence of the Buddhas. So in one tradition, it says, because the Buddhas have the clairvoyance, so whenever you think of them, with their clairvoyance, they see that and they come in the space in front of you. Because they can travel at the speed of thought, so for them, they can be there instantaneously. And another tradition says that the omniscient mind, so the Dharmakaya, pervades all phenomena. And wherever the omniscient mind is, the subtle body, light energy body, is also there. They're inseparable. So from that perspective, whenever you think of a Buddha, he's there, right there in front of you instantaneously, manifesting from the Dharmakaya. So spending some time, sometimes being in the presence of the Buddha by invoking them like that, it's a very virtuous state of mind. It brings you closer to the Buddha, closer to enlightenment. And it opens you to a spiritual dimension of life that's beyond the senses. And in that interaction with the Buddha, this blessing, this peace, this joy. And also, when we have problems in life, so to invoke the Buddhas, if one is acquainted with that practice, then when you have problems, you say you can invoke the Buddhas and ask their blessing, their protection, their help. And especially at the time of death. So if we could remember the Buddhas at the time of death, then it says that even if you have the karma to be born in the lower realm, if you remember the Buddha at the time of death, so that state of mind is so virtuous that actually it prevents the negative karma from ripening. So one would have a very good rebirth again. So I think our gurus, you see, like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, His Holiness Dalai Lama, Rinpo Rinpoche, Kirti Sanjapa Rinpoche, all these lamas, every day they spend a lot of time focusing on the Buddhas. And some of them, basically, they are in the presence of the Buddha all the time. So they keep the merit field in front of them all the time. Or they can invoke it at will and feel their presence whenever they want. So practice like Guru Yoga, like Refuge, Guru Yoga, Ganden Lagyema, Guru Puja, all these practices, you are in the presence of the Buddha by doing these practices. And then in Tantra 2, you invoke this merit field of the Buddhas and you're in their presence. And you engage in activity based on that relationship with these Buddhas. So at the beginning, the mind is quite obscure, and we have a lot of thoughts, a lot of distraction. And we don't exactly know how these things work. So it takes time to clear this veil and establish those communication. So cleaning practice like Vajrasattva, prostration and Guru Yoga, like Namatsangkapa Guru Yoga, all these various practice clean our mind, and then it makes it easier to feel this connection with the Buddhas. Then the next state of mind one tries to induce is the mind of bodhicitta. So one tries to open one's heart to all living beings. So we all have already an open heart. No? We care for our children, our parents, our friends. our community. So gradually we have to open it bigger, 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 till the same love that you have to your children, your parents, your friend, you're able to have the same love for all living beings. And there's two main approach. One is to feel like, your partner, your children, and the close ones, how they make you happy, how they were the cause of so much happiness. That's why we have this love for them, because they make us so happy. So we imagine that all beings have been so kind to us. They also have made us happy, not in this life, but in many, many past lives. So like you feel intimate to these people now in your life. In other lives, other people have been intimate to you in the same way. And since lives are without beginning, so all beings in that worldview, all beings have been intimate with you like the closed one you have now. Because normally we have this indifference towards people which we don't know. So if you think of all beings having been kind to you, like the present one in your life, then it's easy to generate this love and care for all living beings. So the Tibetans, they principally focus on the mother, the kindness of the mother, and then they call all living beings, mother sentient being. All beings have been my mother. So by reflecting on the kindness of the mother, they replicate that. So you could say mother ant, mother cat, mother Putin, mother Trump. So if you do that, actually, instead of having this natural closed heart towards these beings, so if you think of them as having been your partner, your child, your parents, so suddenly it helps you to break open your heart towards them. It's not that you condone what they do now, but you focus on this intimacy that you have had with them in the past. And like that, you can focus, then like that, you can generate love and compassion for them. So if you think of the beings in this room, that each one has been your mother, your partner, your child. So suddenly all the people in the room feel close to you. So we know this meditation intellectually, but it takes quite some training to actually feel it in your heart. You know that spontaneously you feel all beings as your close relatives. You know, when you walk down the street, we might know it intellectually that all these beings have been my mother or my partner, but we don't feel it in the heart. Whereas if you have been around Lama Zopa Rinpoche or His Holiness Dalai Lama, they really feel it in their heart. So it's not just an intellectual concept, it's something felt in the heart. And then after a while, one can put this idea onto the breath. So as we exhale, we send out love. And as we inhale, we imagine experiencing compassion for the suffering that all these beings experience. So putting it on the movement of the breath is a little bit more difficult than just focusing on love for a few minutes and focusing on compassion for a few minutes, because we breathe in about 20 seconds and breathe out 20 seconds. So your mind has to switch from love to compassion. However, after a while, you see that love and compassion can be experienced kind of simultaneously. And then once one has this sincere love and sincere compassion. Out of that comes this determination. I will free all beings from their problem by myself alone. So it's my responsibility to free all living beings. They have been my dear mother, my dear father, my partner, my children, so many times. How can I not care for them? So we come to that verse from the Bodhicharya. As long as space exists, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too remain to dispel the suffering of the world. And out of this infinite love and compassion for living beings, seeing one's limitation in our capacity to help, we aspire to become Buddha for their sake. So again, aspiring to become Buddha, again you invoke the Buddha in front of you or the Buddha's quality, and you aspire to become like that. You aspire to have these qualities. So if you can generate this huge heart that encompasses all living beings in your care, and for their sake aspire to become Buddha. And then later on engage in the activity to become Buddha. So that state of mind is called bodhicitta. So for us, we are able to generate this effortful experience of bodhicitta by going through these stages. And then later on, we can take shortcuts and able to generate that effortlessly. And then someday, like the bodhisattvas, we're able to stay in that state of mind all the time. So bodhicitta is an amazing achievement to live with that state of mind. So wonderful. It says, anything you do with that state of mind, any virtue you do, is multiplied by the number of living beings. So even just saying one kind word to someone is like saying a kind word to all living beings. So, if there's one realization that we should aspire to get in this life, it is bodhicitta. And the day we generate bodhicitta, we actually enter the Mahayana path. And we become sons and daughters of the Buddha. We enter into the lineage of beings that one day will become omniscient. All right, 15 minutes break.